Amina stood outside the entrance of the airport, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. She had never traveled this far before, and certainly she had never imagined that her journey would begin like this. Holding a first-class ticket in her trembling hands, she glanced at it one more time, as though afraid it might disappear if she looked away. Her simple outfit, an old but clean blouse, a faded pair of jeans, and worn-out shoes, made her blend in with the crowd. Nothing about her appearance screamed luxury. Her hair, neatly tied in a ponytail, framed a face that was often overlooked by the world. There was nothing special about her, nothing that suggested she belonged in a place like this. Yet here she was, about to board a flight that most people would only dream of. Amina had always been shy. She wasn't the type to stand out or speak up. She had always lived a quiet life, in a small town, far away from the bright lights of the city. The ticket she held in her hand had come as a shock, a gift from someone she never thought she would meet. She had worked so hard to make this dream come true, but now that she was here, she wondered if she really belonged. As she walked through the busy terminal, Amina couldn't help but notice the eyes on her. People in the first-class line were dressed in expensive suits, wearing jewelry that sparkled under the bright airport lights. They walked with an air of confidence that made Amina feel even smaller. She had never seen so much wealth in her life. But what truly made her heart sink was the way they were looking at her, as though she didn't belong. She approached the first-class check-in counter with hesitant steps. The ticket clerk, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a professional smile, glanced at Amina and then at the ticket in her hands. Amina could already sense the judgment in the woman's eyes. "Excuse me, miss," the clerk said, her voice polite but cold. "I believe there's been a mistake. This ticket, is it really yours?" Amina felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Her fingers clenched around the ticket. She had saved every penny to afford this, and now it seemed like no one believed she was allowed to be here. "Yes," Amina said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's mine." The clerk cut her off. "Are you sure? Because this ticket is for first class, and well, you don't quite look like you belong there." The words hit Amina harder than she expected. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. The people around them began to notice the conversation. Some passengers glanced at her, whispering to each other, while others turned their heads away, pretending they hadn't noticed. Amina felt her cheeks burn with shame. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not for something like this. The clerk raised an eyebrow, as if daring Amina to argue further. But before Amina could respond, a voice interrupted. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" The question came from another airport staff member, who had arrived just in time to see the tension growing. The clerk quickly explained the situation, but the other staff member only nodded and walked away, leaving Amina feeling even more humiliated. Suddenly, the loud buzz of camera flashes broke through the air, and Amina realized that some passengers had started recording the entire situation on their phones. She could hear a few whispers. "What's she doing in first class? And she doesn't even look like she can afford that ticket." Amina's hands trembled as she clutched her bag tighter. The public embarrassment was too much to handle. Was it possible that her dreams of leaving her small town, of seeing the world, were going to end before they even began? Just when Amina thought the situation couldn't get worse, the airport doors swung open with a sudden rush. The sound of a powerful engine roared from outside. The crowd parted as a luxury car pulled up in front of the entrance. It wasn't just any car. It was a shiny black limousine, sleek and expensive, with tinted windows that suggested power and wealth. The crowd fell silent as the limousine door opened, and out stepped a man who seemed to carry an aura of authority. He was tall, wearing an expensive suit and sunglasses, his presence commanding attention without a single word. He looked like someone who owned the world. Amina barely noticed him at first. She was too lost in her own embarrassment to pay attention to anyone else. But as the man began walking towards her, the crowd seemed to shift. People took a step back, recognizing him immediately. "Excuse me, miss," the man said as he approached Amina. His voice was calm but strong, and there was something about the way he spoke that made everyone else pause. "Is there a problem?" Amina blinked, her mind struggling to process what was happening. She hadn't expected to see anyone like him. Certainly not now. The days following the approval of Amina's proposal felt like a turning point in her life. What had once seemed like a dream, an impossible journey from a life of modesty and quiet existence to one of power and influence, was beginning to feel like her reality. But despite the success of the board meeting, she knew there was more to prove, more to face. The doubts, the judgments, and the weight of expectations still loomed large. Amina had learned that success didn't come without its own challenges. Every decision she made, every move she took, came under scrutiny. The business world her father had introduced her to was not kind to newcomers, and she could sense that some were still waiting for her to slip up. Even as she stood in her father's shadow, some members of his team continued to test her resolve. But Amina was different now. She had built a new strength, one that was born from her own resilience, from the quiet determination that had always been there. It wasn't about fitting in anymore. It was about carving her own space in the world, one step at a time. One evening, after another day of meetings and strategy sessions, Amina sat in her father's office, reflecting on everything that had changed. The city lights twinkled outside the window, casting a soft glow across the room. Ibrahim had just left for an international business trip, and for the first time in a long while, Amina found herself alone in the vast, opulent space. It was strange how comfortable she had become in this place, and yet how far she still had to go. She took a deep breath and glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost midnight. The room felt eerily quiet, but in that silence, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. The world outside was bustling, but in this moment, she had clarity. It was then that she heard a knock at the door. "Come in," she called softly, not expecting anyone. The door creaked open, and in walked Nadia, her aunt. Her expression was warm, but there was something more in her eyes, an understanding that only someone who had walked alongside her could truly offer. "Mind if I join you?" Nadia asked, stepping into the room and sitting across from Amina. Amina smiled, feeling the familiar comfort of her aunt's presence. "Of course. I was just thinking." "I can tell," Nadia said, a hint of a smile on her lips. "You've been doing a lot of that lately." Amina chuckled lightly. "I guess I have. So much has changed, and I don't always know what to make of it. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a role, pretending to be someone I'm not." Nadia's gaze softened. "You're not pretending, Amina. You've always been strong, long before any of this came into your life. This world may be new to you, but who you are, that's not something you need to learn. It's always been inside of you." Amina looked at her aunt, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I've been trying so hard to fit in, to prove myself. But sometimes I feel like I'm still not enough for them, like they're waiting for me to make a mistake." The following days felt like a dream to Amina. What had started as a shocking encounter at the airport had now blossomed into a whirlwind of new experiences. She was still trying to adjust to everything. The man she had just met calling himself her father, the grand luxury of the world he inhabited, and the realization that her life was about to change in ways she never thought possible. Her father, whom she had learned was Ibrahim Malik, the owner of one of the largest airlines in the country, had made it clear that he was determined to be part of her life. He had spent years searching for her, but now that he had found her, he wasn't going to let her slip away again. "I know this is overwhelming, Amina," Ibrahim said as they sat in the private lounge at the airport, his voice calm and comforting. "But I want you to know that I'm here. I've always wanted to be here for you. And now that you know the truth, we can move forward, but we'll do it at your pace." Amina could hardly wrap her mind around the idea that this man, who seemed to have everything, wanted to be a part of her life. Her world had always been small. It had always been about survival, about making ends meet. She was used to modest homes, simple meals, and a life that felt far removed from the lavish world her father lived in. But now, everything had changed. In the days that followed, Ibrahim took Amina on a tour of his company's headquarters, which was located in the heart of the city. The building was nothing like anything Amina had ever seen. It towered above the other buildings, its glass windows reflecting the sunlight like diamonds. Inside, everything was pristine and immaculate. Every corner, every room, was a reminder of the wealth and power that her father commanded. "Welcome to my world, Amina," Ibrahim said with a smile, showing her the view from his office. "This is where the decisions are made, where we shape the future of the airline. But none of this matters if I don't have you in my life." Amina could hardly believe the words he was saying. She had spent her whole life struggling to make ends meet, and now here she was, standing in a place that seemed so out of reach, so foreign. Yet, Ibrahim's sincerity was undeniable. He wasn't interested in just showing her the money or the status. He was interested in her. They spent hours talking, getting to know each other better. Amina learned that her father wasn't just a businessman. He was a man with deep regrets, with a love for her mother that had never faded, and with a desire to make up for lost time. He told her about the years of searching for her, about the letters he had written that had never been answered, about the plans he had made to try to find her, only to be thwarted by her mother's decision to keep her hidden away. "I never wanted you to think I abandoned you, Amina," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't be there for you when you needed me most, and that's something I'll always regret. But I'm here now, and I promise I won't disappear again." Amina was still grappling with the reality of everything. It was difficult for her to accept that her mother had kept such an important part of her life a secret. She didn't know if she was ready to let go of the past or embrace this new future, but the kindness in Ibrahim's words made her want to try. For the first time, she could see the possibility of a family, something she had never truly known. The next day, Ibrahim invited Amina to a family gathering at his mansion, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city. Amina hesitated at first. She wasn't sure if she was ready to meet the rest of his family, to see what this new world would look like up close. But Ibrahim assured her that everything would be okay. "You don't have to impress anyone, Amina," he said with a reassuring smile. "You're my daughter. That's all that matters." As they arrived at the mansion, Amina's heart pounded. The house was beyond anything she had ever imagined. It was more than a mansion. It was a palace. Large, luxurious rooms, chandeliers hanging from the ceilings, walls lined with art that looked like it belonged in a museum. She couldn't help but feel out of place. Everything felt so extravagant, so far removed from the life she had known. When they entered the conference room, she was immediately struck by the confident way her father carried himself. His presence was commanding, and people immediately respected him. He introduced Amina to everyone, his pride clear in his voice. But as the meeting progressed, Amina felt her confidence growing. She started to speak more, offering her insights, asking questions. People listened to her, and for the first time in her life, she realized that she had a lot to offer. By the end of the meeting, she was no longer the quiet observer. She had participated, had been heard, and it felt good. She wasn't just a passenger in this world. She was part of it. Later that evening, Ibrahim looked at her with a proud smile. "You did great today, Amina." She beamed back at him. "Thank you. I think I'm starting to find my way." As the days passed, Amina began to settle into this new life, finding a balance between the world she had always known and the world her father had opened up to her. She spent time with Nadia, her aunt, and other family members, learning how to navigate the intricacies of high society. But more importantly, she began to find her voice. She realized that this life didn't have to change who she was. It just meant she had more opportunities to do what she loved, to make a difference. Amina had always wanted to help others, and she began to think about ways she could use her newfound position to make a positive impact. Ibrahim continued to be her rock, supporting her every step of the way. And Amina was beginning to see that maybe, just maybe, she could have the best of both worlds: the quiet, humble life she had once known, and the powerful, fulfilling future that awaited her. For the first time, she felt like she was not just a part of her father's world, but that she was shaping her own destiny within it. Weeks had passed since Amina began her journey into this new world. Her confidence was growing, but so were the challenges. As she adapted to the luxury and the expectations placed on her as Ibrahim Malik's daughter, she began to realize that there were forces in her new life that she had never considered before, forces that could challenge not only her place in this world, but also the bond she had started to build with her father. It was one quiet evening when the storm started brewing. Amina had just finished a meeting with one of her father's business associates. They were discussing a potential charity event that Amina had been helping to organize, aiming to support underprivileged children around the world. It was a cause she felt deeply passionate about, one that connected to the values she had grown up with. But as she left the meeting room and walked down the sleek marble hallway of her father's office, she overheard something that made her stop dead in her tracks. "Do you really think she can handle it?" one of her father's trusted advisors, Hassan, was saying in a hushed tone to another executive. "She's been thrown into this life overnight. How long do you think she can keep up the act?" Amina's heart raced. She knew they weren't talking about her in the most flattering way, and it hurt more than she expected. They didn't know her. They didn't know how much she wanted to prove herself, not just to them, but to her father. Hassan's voice continued, unaware that Amina was standing nearby. "Ibrahim's a businessman. He's tough. If he lets her into his world too soon, she'll get eaten alive. She's not made for this. The board will never accept her." Amina's stomach dropped, her mind racing. "They don't believe in me. They think I'm a liability. I'm just an outsider to them." Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to keep walking, making sure to step lightly so no one noticed her presence. She made her way back to her room, locking the door behind her. Her pulse was pounding in her ears. The world she had just started to embrace, the world that had seemed so welcoming just weeks ago, now felt cold and unforgiving. Amina didn't know how long she sat there, staring at the floor. She tried to make sense of the words she had heard. "Maybe they're right," she thought. "Maybe I don't belong here." But deep down, Amina knew that wasn't true. She had spent her entire life being underestimated, but she had always found a way to rise above it. She had worked hard to get where she was, not just in the world she came from, but in this one. She wasn't going to let their doubts hold her back. Not again. The next morning, Ibrahim called Amina into his office. His expression was serious yet kind. "Amina, we need to talk," he said softly, gesturing for her to sit across from him. Amina felt a knot in her stomach. She wasn't sure what this conversation would be about, but the tension in his voice told her that something was wrong. She sat down, her hands nervously clasped together. "I overheard something last night," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. "What did you hear?" Amina looked at him directly. "Some of your team. They don't believe I'm ready. They think I'm not made for this world, that I'll fail. They think I'm just a liability." For a moment, Ibrahim didn't say anything. He just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. "I've been waiting for this," he admitted. "Amina, I've been protecting you from the challenges this world will throw at you. I didn't want you to face criticism or pressure before you were ready, but I can see now that you're more than ready." Amina felt a surge of relief at his words, but it was quickly followed by doubt. "But what about them? How am I supposed to prove myself when they don't even believe in me? It feels like they're waiting for me to fail." Amina couldn't believe what was happening. Her heart pounded in her chest as the man, the one who had called her daughter, walked beside her, guiding her through the airport. She had so many questions, but none of them seemed to matter right now. The crowd had fallen silent, and all eyes were on her. But inside, her mind was racing back to a different time. A time when she had no idea that this moment would ever come. The man led Amina into a private lounge, away from the eyes of the public. The soft hum of the airport felt distant now, as though she had been transported to another world. The lounge was luxurious, with plush chairs and a serene atmosphere, completely different from the noisy terminal she had just walked through. Amina was still in shock, trying to piece together everything that had just happened. As she sat down in one of the chairs, the man looked at her, his expression soft but serious. "Before we go any further, I think you deserve to know the truth," he said, his voice steady but filled with a warmth she hadn't expected. "There's a lot you don't know about your past, and it's time I told you." Amina's heart skipped a beat. The truth. She had never heard these words before. She had lived her whole life wondering who her father was, but she never imagined that the answer would come in this way. The man took a deep breath and sat down opposite her, his eyes searching for the right words. "It's not easy to explain, Amina," he began, his voice gentle. "But I owe you an explanation. You see, I've been looking for you for years, ever since your mother left me." Amina blinked, confused. "My mother left you?" The man nodded, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "Yes, your mother and I were once in love, but circumstances, well, they were complicated. I had my responsibilities, my business, and your mother, she wanted a simpler life. We were young, and I was caught up in my own world. I didn't think about the consequences of what I was doing. When she found out she was pregnant, she decided to leave the city, to leave me." Amina felt her breath catch in her throat. This wasn't the story she had imagined. She had always thought her mother was just a poor, single woman trying her best to raise a child. But now she was learning that there was so much more to the story, things her mother had never shared with her. The man continued, his voice full of regret. "Your mother never told me about you, Amina. She thought it was better that way. She didn't want to bring you into a world of wealth and power, a world that was far from the kind of life she wanted for you." Amina's mind raced as she processed his words. She had always wondered why her father had never come for her, why she had never been a part of his life. Now it was clear. Her mother had made the decision to protect her from a life she thought would be too difficult for a child to handle. But that still didn't explain everything. If this man was really her father, why hadn't he come looking for her? "Why didn't you try harder to find us?" Amina asked, her voice trembling slightly. The man sighed deeply, regret filling his eyes. "I did try, Amina. I searched for your mother, but she vanished without a trace. I hired people to find her, but she always stayed one step ahead. I thought about you every day, wondering if you were safe, if you were happy. But it wasn't until recently that I finally discovered where you were. And now, here we are." Amina sat back in her chair, feeling a wave of emotions crash over her. She was angry at her mother for hiding the truth from her, but at the same time, she understood. Her mother had done it out of love. She had made the choice to keep Amina away from a life that might have overwhelmed her. Still, there was so much she didn't know. "You're saying, you're my father?" Amina whispered, as though the words still didn't make sense. The man nodded. "Yes, I am. And I've made a lot of mistakes, Amina. But I want to make things right. I want to be part of your life, if you'll have me." The clerk stammered as she began to explain the situation, but the man wasn't listening. Instead, he looked directly at Amina, and to everyone's surprise, he smiled warmly. "Why are you treating my daughter like this?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "She has every right to be here." The words struck like lightning. The crowd went silent. The staff stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Amina's eyes widened in shock. "Daughter," she whispered under her breath. Could this man really be her? Without a word, the man turned to her. He extended his hand, And with a calm, reassuring smile, he spoke again. "You don't need to explain, my dear. Let's go. I'll take you to your seat." The entire room watched in stunned silence as the powerful man, with the elegance of someone who owned the world, led Amina away from the counter, leaving behind a trail of whispers and wide eyes. Amina was no longer just a shy girl from a small town. Today, her life would change forever. The family gathering was lively, with laughter filling the rooms. Ibrahim introduced Amina to his relatives, cousins, uncles, aunts, all of them well-dressed, well-spoken, and seemingly unaffected by the wealth they had been born into. Some of them were polite, others curious. But Amina couldn't shake the feeling that she was under a microscope, being observed, analyzed. After all, she was the outsider, the one who had suddenly appeared from nowhere. As the evening wore on, Amina found herself talking to Ibrahim's younger sister, Nadia. Nadia was kind, with a soft laugh and an understanding smile. She could sense Amina's discomfort and tried to make her feel more at ease. "You're doing great," Nadia said, noticing the nervousness in Amina's posture. "It's a lot to take in, but you're not alone. We're family now, and we'll support you through this." Amina smiled faintly, grateful for Nadia's warmth. As they sat in one of the quieter rooms, talking about their lives, Amina began to feel a bit more at ease. She learned that Nadia had always been close to Ibrahim and had known about Amina's existence for years. She had even helped her father search for her, although she hadn't known exactly where to look. "I'm so glad you're here," Nadia said softly. "I've heard so much about you. I can't wait to get to know you better." That night, Amina went to bed with a heavy heart, but something had shifted. The walls she had built around herself, the walls she had put up to protect herself from disappointment and pain, were slowly starting to crumble. The love her father had for her was undeniable, and although she wasn't sure if she could ever fully embrace this new world, she knew that this was a beginning. A chance to build something new, something real. The next day, Ibrahim asked Amina to join him at his private jet for a trip abroad, to help her see the world he had always wanted to share with her. He was patient, understanding, and eager to make up for lost time. "Wherever you want to go, Amina, we can make it happen," he said with a smile. "This is your world now, too." Amina looked out the window of the jet as it took off, the city below becoming smaller and smaller. As they soared higher into the sky, she realized something. Her life was no longer small. It wasn't the life she had known, but it was hers to shape. And as uncertain as the future felt, Amina knew that whatever happened, she wouldn't be facing it alone. For the first time in her life, Amina realized that everything she thought she knew about herself had been a lie. Her mother's decision to protect her had created a life for Amina that was built on secrecy. The life she had lived had been real, but it had been missing a part of her, her true identity, her family, her past. Her father sat there, watching her closely, as though waiting for her to make a decision. He didn't push her, but his eyes held a sense of hope. Hope that she might accept him, hope that she might understand why he had done what he did. Amina took a deep breath and spoke the words that had been building inside her since this strange journey had begun. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," she said softly, her voice uncertain. "But I want to know more. I want to understand who I really am. I want to know where I come from." Her father's face lit up with relief and emotion. He reached across the table and gently took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Then we'll take it one step at a time, Amina," he said with a smile. "One step at a time." As Amina sat there, holding her father's hand, she felt a mix of emotions. This was just the beginning. The truth was out now, and with it came a new chapter, one that was full of both uncertainty and possibility. Amina didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she could find her place in this world, this new world that was slowly opening up to her. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind. Amina's life, once simple and quiet, had been transformed into something that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. She had spent the past few days traveling with her father, Ibrahim, visiting different countries, seeing sights she had only dreamed about. She had attended luxurious events, dined in five-star restaurants, and stayed in the kind of hotels that felt like palaces. Yet through it all, there was still a part of her that felt like a stranger in this world. Though her father's love and patience had made her feel accepted, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't quite belong. The world she was now part of felt too grand, too unfamiliar. The people were different, the conversations were different, and most of all, she was different. She had always been a quiet, reserved girl, someone who had learned to stay out of the spotlight. Now she was expected to fit into this new life, to be the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country. It was as if the entire world was watching her, waiting for her to fail, waiting to see if she could keep up with the pace of this high society. One evening, after returning from a gala in Paris, Amina sat in her room, staring out at the city lights below. The luxury of the penthouse apartment her father had arranged for them was undeniable. Soft, velvet curtains, gold accents on the furniture, an expansive view of the skyline. But the opulence of it all felt distant, like she wasn't meant to be there. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her father. "Amina, I know it's been a lot. If you need time, if you need to talk, I'm here." She smiled softly at his words. He truly cared. But could she really fit into this world? Could she leave behind the simple life she had known for so long? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Ibrahim. "Mind if I come in?" he asked gently, peeking his head into the room. "Of course," Amina replied, sitting up straighter in the chair by the window. He entered and sat next to her on the edge of the bed, his expression thoughtful. "You've been quiet lately, Amina. How are you feeling?" Amina didn't know where to begin. She had so many emotions that she wasn't sure how to express them. "I don't know," she said honestly. "This whole thing, it's just so much. I've never lived this way before. I'm not used to all this attention, all the people watching me. And sometimes I feel like I don't belong." Ibrahim nodded, his eyes kind. "I understand. It's a big change, and it's okay to feel out of place. But I want you to remember something. This isn't about fitting into a world or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about being yourself. This world, the people in it, they're just people. And I've never wanted you to change who you are to fit in. You're enough, Amina, just as you are." His words struck a chord in her heart. She had spent so long trying to be something she wasn't, trying to live up to an ideal of what she thought this life should look like. But now, in this moment, she realized that her father had never wanted her to change. He just wanted her to be herself. "I want to try," she said softly, her voice growing more confident. "I want to learn how to live this life, but I don't want to lose myself in it. I don't want to forget where I came from." "I would never ask you to," Ibrahim replied with a warm smile. "You don't have to be anyone but Amina, and I'll be here to support you through all of it." Amina smiled back at him, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She could do this. She didn't have to lose herself in the process of finding her place in this new world. She could be both the girl from the small town and the daughter of a powerful man. The next day, Ibrahim invited Amina to one of his business meetings, a gathering with some of the most influential people in the country. It was a daunting thought. Amina had always been a quiet observer, never the one to take center stage. But this time, she felt different. She was no longer the girl who had been kicked out of the first-class line. She was the daughter of Ibrahim Malik, and she had a voice that mattered. Amina didn't know what to say. Her whole life had been shaped by the absence of a father. She had always imagined what it would be like, what he would look like, what he would say, what kind of person he would be. And now, sitting in front of her, was a man who claimed to be her father. A man who had been searching for her all this time, but who had been kept away by her mother's decision to protect her. For a moment, there was silence between them. Amina's mind was swirling with thoughts and emotions. She was scared, confused, and overwhelmed. But beneath it all, there was a part of her that longed for connection. A part of her that wanted to know who she really was, who she came from, and what her future could look like now that she had found her father. "I don't know what to say," Amina whispered, her voice shaky. The man reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You don't have to say anything right now, Amina. I understand. But know this, I'm here now, and I won't leave you again." Amina stared at him, feeling a mix of emotions, confusion, fear, but also something else. Hope. For the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't alone in the world. There was a family she never knew about, and maybe, just maybe, she could find a place in it. As the minutes passed, Amina felt the weight of her past slowly begin to shift. The answers she had always searched for were within her reach. But now, she had to decide if she was ready to accept them. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. A chapter she never imagined would come. Amina sat in the luxurious lounge, still processing the words that had just come from the man she now knew to be her father. The silence between them stretched on, thick with so many unspoken emotions. She had never imagined that a day like this would come. That a man she had never met would claim to be her father and explain that he had spent years searching for her. That the truth of her life, the secret her mother had carried for so long, would finally be revealed. Her father, whom she had never known, was watching her carefully. His eyes were filled with a kind of sadness, but also determination. He had said he was there to make things right, to be a part of her life. But how could she just accept this sudden truth? Amina didn't know how to feel. She didn't know if she was ready for this new world he was offering her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice soft. Amina blinked, trying to focus, her hands still trembling slightly. She had so many questions, so many emotions swirling inside her. She didn't even know where to begin. I don't know," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "It's just so much to take in. I didn't know any of this." Her father nodded, his expression understanding. "I know, Amina. I know this is a lot to process. But I want you to understand something. Your mother, she made the decision to keep you away from me because she thought it was best for you. She loved you so much that she kept you safe from all the chaos of my world, the wealth, the business, the pressure, everything that comes with being part of this life." Amina looked down at her hands, still trying to absorb everything. Her mother had always been her only family, the one constant in her life. She had never thought about her mother's past, never imagined that her life could have been different. The idea of a world full of power, wealth, and influence was something so foreign to her. She had never even dreamed of it. But now the man who claimed to be her father was sitting across from her, explaining how much he had wanted to be part of her life all these years, how he had searched for her, hoping to reconnect. She took a deep breath and finally spoke the question that had been on her mind since he had first called her daughter. "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" Amina asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "If you were looking for me all this time, why didn't you find a way to reach out to me? Why didn't you tell me the truth earlier?" Her father looked down, a shadow of regret crossing his face. He hesitated before responding, the words clearly difficult for him. "Amina, I tried. I hired private investigators. I went through every lead I could find. But your mother, she was always one step ahead. She didn't want me to find you, and she was good at hiding. I respected her wishes, even if it meant not being in your life. I thought about you every day, wondering how you were, if you were happy, if you were safe." Amina's heart ached at his words. It was clear that her father had cared about her, had wanted to be there for her. But her mother's decision had kept him at a distance, and now that she knew the truth, it felt like a sudden rush of emotions. She felt betrayed by her mother for not telling her, but at the same time, she understood. Her mother had always tried to protect her, to shield her from a life that could have been difficult and complicated. "I never wanted to hurt you, Amina," her father continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted you to feel abandoned. But I couldn't force your mother to tell you the truth. I had to respect her choice, even though it hurt me." Amina's mind was a whirlwind. She had always wondered about her father, about where he was, why he wasn't part of her life. She had lived with that emptiness for so long. And now, here he was, standing before her, explaining everything she had never known. It was hard to process, to accept, but she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "So, you've been looking for me all this time. And my mother knew you were looking for us." Her father nodded slowly. "Yes, she knew. She didn't want you to grow up in the world I live in, Amina. She wanted you to have a normal life. But she also knew that one day I would find you. And now that I have, I want to be a part of your life. I want to make up for the lost time, if you'll let me." Amina's heart pounded in her chest as the weight of his words sank in. This was the moment she had always dreamed of, finding her father, understanding where she came from. But it was also a moment of intense emotion. She had so many mixed feelings. Anger at her mother for hiding the truth, confusion about how to move forward with this newfound knowledge, and fear about what it would mean for her future.